let's discuss the topic of looking at folk art from an alternative context, where the context is changing. It's not being produced in the traditional surrounding where it originated from, but it's finding its new place, and that is giving it some kind of a substitutional context. So, in that topic, we must try to find out the place of folk art in the contemporary lifestyle, which is very important for it. Contemporary habitat is an alternative context for folk art. It is an undeniable fact that the elements and principle of folk art practice are the offshoots of a particular lifestyle that involved certain beliefs that is often regional and purely habitual. The lifestyle of an ethnic society is the life force that causes the art forms to emerge and grow. To find the place and justify the role as well as the need of such cultural practices in today's society and culture, it requires a scrutiny to the guiding factors that determines its life. So there are three factors that we may consider for now. One, if we count the lifestyle as a variable, the life of the practice is not guaranteed. Two, if we count the lifestyle as invariable, the life of the practice is artificial. 3. If we suggest an alternative lifestyle that duly supports the practice, the lifestyle can also cause the art forms to alter. The third option ensures a survival of the practice in new circumstances, which can support the practice to cope up with the contemporary art scene and cater to the need of the modern art market. But to appreciate the new art forms as an outcome of an alternative condition, the society also needs adequate preparation. If the contemporary demand suffers from any sort of ethnomaniac syndromes, the folk art will die in stagnancy. If folk forms are hypothetically set in a symbolic relationship with mainstream modern art, they cannot mutually benefit from each other unless there is a right awareness. The folk imageries have influenced the mainstream artists and provoked their thoughts and visions towards innovative solutions in India, Europe, and many other countries' art scene. So, I'll discuss quite a few very crucial points in this context, not to reach to a conclusion as much as to analyze the topic and continue the research. And slowly it may land to a different conclusion that provides us with some possible solutions. So, there's 3 points where the lifestyle is fixed and the practice is changing. The other context is where the lifestyle is not changing and the practice is going on in an artificial mode. Let's see how they can be counted. As we discussed in our previous lecture, that what is remaining constant? Is it the style and identity, the ethos, or anything more? What is crucial? To some extent, we have come to some conclusion that it's if the identity, the stylistic identity, the recognizability, the aesthetic quantum, as well as the making of it and the expression that comes through it, the value, the ancient value system, if that is constant, then our purpose is served. We may say that the culture is sustaining, it's living. But then, what are the other alternatives? Let's jot down a few points to our mind to elaborate the idea into the form of a discussion. Folk art has drawn elements from classical art and ancient literary sources that gave it some kind of a regimentation in their principal objectives. They worked as a restriction. The artist knew very clearly for themselves what has to be done. And it also provided the artist with some bit of a convenient. They knew that the thought is decided, it's there in one place, and their work to explore the style and reach the excellence. As the artworks are highly skill based, everybody had to get tuned to certain community skill, which is common for all. So it's more like a training where everybody comes down to a common platform and practice. So this is perhaps the most discrete point that separates primitive art and folk art to a level, whereas primitive art has an ageless quality to it, that it's basic, the kind of style that we get to see would never change. It's acceptable universally. Wherever we show primitive art, we know that they have a certain bit of an appeal to people, regardless of their caste, creed, ethnicity, nationality, and so on. So, folk art, for its literally inclination, does not remain an instinctive and spontaneous practice as primitive art does. Folk art follows a strict foundation that governs the order of space division, the presence of symbolic and allegorical images, which often has a very strong literary base to it. They're connected to some strong literature, and the symbols are then deciphered by people who are acquainted with that particular literary ethos or the literary exposure. So the allegorical images, the symbols, lots of signs and icons which are that we see, which are also highly culture specific, that we get to see here, and that are mostly mandatory rather than arbitrary. The aesthetic continuum of contemporary practice is not free from traditional elements either. In them, we see reminiscent of the past, but they are embedded with individualistic expression. The contemporary range of multifaceted and varied colored imageries that is like available now around us, and full of promises of originality and innovativeness, the kind of artistic freedom that is providing them with the kind of innovative images that they are incorporating in their artworks. That's important. And then this is something where it's when we see they're perhaps emerging from a traditional foundation by means of fresh observation. So it's skill, observation, analysis, the sense of creating a space, that kind of an expertise, and many other things like any other art forms that is working together to give it the right expression, which is appreciated and seriously taken by a large mass all over the globe. In fact, the study of folk art was related to the field of anthropology for a very long time, and it found its significance there more than anything else. But this is not something what is in the practice right now. It is only very recently that a revision in the area of pedagogic study of history justified the complete nature of visual history by including visual studies in history of art, and the inclusion of folk and minor art into history of art justifies it even better. The general notion about folk painting in common people is full of association with the ancient. The materialization of the contemporary range of serious artworks is still a matter of a larger awareness that we are discussing here. The way folk art is being viewed also needs some bit of a renewal for the same reason. The contemporary aesthetics that conform to the essentials of its origin and thrive with individual expression today needs a proper tracking from the part of the viewers, the people who are seeing them, buying them, appreciating them, preserving them, collecting them, curating them, and there are many other people who are getting involved into the thing, those who are being instrumental to shift the paradigm to a different paradigm, and we are coming to the topic slowly. So let's also discuss about the new methodology of viewing and appreciating contemporary folk art that may justify the viewing to fit to a parallel culture where folk and minor art will also be viewed with the same sentiment that we hold for any other art forms. We should not separate them or look down upon it, or in fact, like we may feel that we hold some special consideration in favor of folk art. None of these activities would duly justify its importance. So, if it has the required quality, we should also see it from a proper perspective. So, as we discussed, that we should also bring down our way of looking at it as description, analysis, interpretation, judgment, coming down to some conclusion, comparison, comparing the tradition with other traditions, comparing folk art with mainstream academic art practices, looking at folk art from the perspective of community beholders, to place it as graffitis or public art. Anything has tremendous possibility to give it the proper facelift that folk art needed. And also looking at them from the three-layered vision, where it's not only the thematic content or the thematic analysis or the symbolic values, the iconic features, the iconographic aspects are viewed, but it is seen from a purely semiotic perspective, where we approach towards its visuals in terms of their elementary value, how strong the lines are, how expressive the line qualities are, is very important to see how the color combination is used here. Because most of the time we see that folk art's color combinations are mandatory rather than arbitrary, and that puts the value slightly down for a reason that the expressive qualities are not counted in most of the cases. When we know that somebody has used a red because using red was auspicious and compulsory, it just occurs to our mind that this is connected to some superstition or some beliefs which are very backward. So we start looking down upon them, and we do not value the expressive urge that the folk artist is also holding, like any other artists in this whole world. So it's very important to see things and also encourage the entire viewing by providing us with that particular freedom and not thinking that they're bound to continue with certain thing. The identity can be maintained in many other ways. It's also true in a context that maybe an example will make it more lively and clear to you, that it may happen that often we feel that everybody is getting trained under certain tutelage, where the master painters are teaching them to be uniform. So, what about the individual identity? Is it only the use of subject matter, or the individual artworks can be identified? But that is happening. In fact, the master painters, they are most of the time so sensitive that we can only make it out when we interact with them, that they say that it's the same line applied by 2-3 different people. Some lines are arrogant, some lines are calm, some lines are strong, some are weak, and that is how the as we say for any other relevance of art, the expressionistic quality of art, that in art we reveal ourselves according to Tagore and not the object so much. So that should also apply for folk and minor art, where we look at it from a purely semiotic point of view, and that is very important. So it takes us to a different direction to look at them and conduct a serious viewing for folk art. We should not take it for granted. We should spend time looking at them and understanding the intricacies of them. So, I would like to quote Roma Chatterjee in this context. She is the author of this very recent book called Speaking with Pictures, Folk Art and the Narrative Tradition in India. In this book, along with many other comments that I am going to enter in, because I would recommend my students who are taking up this course to read this book, because of the kind of work that is produced and the way it is conducted and the way it's written with a lot of concern and knowledge. That shows her involvement, and that is the reason we value her opinions and observations to a large extent. And in the conclusion of our course, I think I must read out quite a few things from that particular book, which is done in a very recent context. The study of folk art that strategically chooses Ramayana as a traditional theme throughout. In the course, I chose Ramayana with a purpose that it should not divert you from many different stories, and apart from Mansa Mangal, I used Ramayana throughout so that we can discuss the visual elements more than anything else. So it's more like seeing Ramayana in different style, which is like, of course, a common theme. So it was slightly strategic from my part to choose Ramayana for the entire course. So the episodes from the epic in single frame and narrative scrolls that was described in the course, and the formats are based on the same story with distinctively different regional styles that we saw. They followed a common visual idiom typical of folk paintings. There we see the space that is usually two-dimensional. There had been no three-dimensional illusion of depth that was created there. So it's two-dimensional in general, with no intention at all to create any kind of other visual depth, which is otherwise very European and scientific in that perspective, that is like known as linear perspective, where we have all the lines converging into one or 2 points, or the multiple perspective of Egyptian art that is also not seen in this context. So the composition are dominant with linear qualities, and all the characters and objects are confined in well-defined contour lines. So I'll read from Roma Chatterjee. So she is writing, the Ramayana is more than a text, however. It is a meta-narrative made up of a corpus of different telling available to successive generations by the diverse performative traditions through which it is embodied. Each new telling assumes knowledge of prior telling. The relationship of previous Ramayana texts allows a certain freedom to latter composers. Since the story is already known, composers are free to dismember the text and to detach particular episodes for fresh enactment or commentary. This is very important to know that a story which is told many a times and being retold, the artist gets a particular freedom. So the choice of stories are also very interesting. When we say that the traditional connection, as we discussed in our point, that if we feel that the artist should free themselves completely from the choice of subject matter, they should not choose stories from any traditional route. We must also see then where to look for. The new stories has to come into the scene. So, an observation made from the modern depiction of the age-old saga includes elements like speech bubbles that we have seen, and after the comic strip pattern in a kalamkari in Sri Kalahasti style, we see that they're using speech bubbles, they're writing things and incorporating many other things into that. So, we have discussed all these new elements that is providing the artworks with certain freedom. At the same time, they are using all those stories for some convenience. At the same time, when we are moving to some new stories, we need to find out better means of that. So the stories should also have some bit of a pictorial possibilities to it. So the story should be enriched with many images and so on. So I would like to read from Roma Chatterjee a little bit to elaborate that concept. So with that, in our next lecture, we are going to move to another very crucial discussion. I'll read from Roma Chatterjee to understand her opinion, and I'll also show you quite a few existing examples in the physical form and discuss about the possible shift in paradigm, how the context can be changed, and also the artworks can get a new medium in its technical possibilities. So, in our next lecture, we are going to talk about the possibilities of paradigm shift when we are changing the means of execution in terms of the medium that we are expressing our ideas in. When we see that the new elements like speech bubbles are getting added into the new paintings, that means it has some possibilities of visual storytelling that it already had traditionally. Now it can also work as a new medium of storytelling in the form of a graphic book perhaps, and that has been explored. So we need to understand what are the different means of the paradigm shift. The two things that comes to our mind very readily, that are the comic books and animations. Because when the images and storytelling they're involved into certain endeavor, these are the two things that we can quickly understand. But then Roma Chatterjee was involved in some of these projects, and I would like to read out from her research some of her experiences, and I'll also show you some of the existing works. Though like in a very limited number, but just to give you some idea how the paradigm can be shifted and how to justify that. Is it the only option, or there are other things that suits the context based on the 3 points that we discussed in this lecture.